Hey guys, welcome back to another GRP open discussion. Today we'll be talking about weapons, specifically SMGs. And SMGs are a bit unique, I think, as compared to assault rifles and light machine guns, because support and assault, at least as the current state of the game is, they really have just one or two go-to weapons. I mean, for assault, if you're optimizing, maximizing, you go for the ASVAL SV, or alternatively, you can go for the AN94 and you're kind of done, right? With the LMGs, you go for some variant of the M96, maybe the Modmaster Type 95, and that's it. SMGs are a different animal in a lot of ways because they're pretty balanced, and one isn't necessarily the tiers don't jump so much in terms of efficacy, so much as they're just very different weapons. So I already talked about, obviously, the Vector. I talked about its advantages and disadvantages. It's a laser gun for an SMG. No recoil, even at 60 meters, especially if you feather it. Really, really nice. Just very, very accurate, and just a really nice SMG. This thing would be insanely good if it had 50 rounds. Alas, it does not. And that's, of course, the disadvantage. It's only got 30 rounds of clip, and that will kill you. You have to play a different kind of SMG Recon when you're using this weapon. You have to be a little bit more cautious than usual. You have to kind of be a sneaky guy, popping in and out, because this weapon does not allow you to just go to town like some other SMGs do. But it's, if you want the highest DPS of any SMG, which I believe for this is 661, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I know it's a little over 660 DPS. This is the one to go with, and you're not going to find something that's quite as accurate, as stable, just because of the fire rate, likely, or who knows exactly the reason, but yeah, this is the one to go with. But it does have a huge disadvantage in terms of the ammo. 30 rounds, I'd say it's probably the most balanced Halloween weapon to come out, just because, yeah, it's just got such limited ammo. But the funny thing is, the competitor with this, or the weapon that you would arguably use as opposed to this is not the next, the other tier 9, the OC14. I'll get to that in a second. But the CPW. I like using CPW, Modmaster. It's very similar. It's got, not as quite the high fire rate, not as quite high DPS. Got more than 100 less DPS, or rather more than 100 less fire rate, 10% less armor piercing. But with the Modmaster, it's just as stable at long ranges, and it's burst fire. Burst fire on any weapon is a very useful thing, because as you know, the chances of getting crits are increased by burst fire, because your chances of getting crits go down the more shots you fire. So burst fire is only a couple, and it's got almost the same laser accuracy as the Vector. Not quite, but more importantly, it's got 50 rounds, which allows you to go to town a little bit more. You can be a little, I guess, more careless, or you don't have to be quite as careful when you're shooting the gun, and that's an advantage. I mean, it's rare that I snipe. I've been trying to improve. It's my worst setup, sniping, and then I always go back to 4-star when I start sniping, but on Metro, I'm convinced, I'm of the opinion that you can't just have snipers, even if they're using a scan. You need an SMGer at the front line with the support and assault to back them up with the frontline scan, and I'm usually filling that role. So yeah, on big maps, I actually tend to gravitate to the CPW, because it gives me a balance of the stuff I get in the Vector, the accuracy, the stability, and the range. I use a long barrel on it. I mean, you can use a medium if you want. It's up to you. For me, the more control, the more accuracy, the better. And like I said, the burst mode is pretty helpful. But we're not done yet, obviously. I actually sold my Modmaster, but I do have the OC14H SD, the Watchdogs. I've been using it a bit, just practicing with it. It's it's okay. It's got a weird spread. It's not, people say, first off, I mean, it's got a really great DPS, high damage per bullet. I'm not complaining about that. But it's just, it doesn't land quite in the same spot as, say, the Vector or the CPW. The spread is kind of you can see, I mean, I can control more, and then, yeah, it works out, but it requires a lot more mouse control, a lot more focus compared to the other two SMGs I just mentioned. It's less of a laser gun and more of a, I don't know, maybe a kind of accurate pistol. But it's good, you know. It's probably better at short, medium range. I wouldn't be using this for super long ranges personally. I don't think it works very well at that, not at least for me. But yeah, you know, it's a pretty good one. It's got a good DPS. The ammo capacity, obviously, somewhere in between 30 and 50, which, you know, it's okay. Got a pretty big ammo pool reserve. You know, if you want to, you can switch to semi, and you know, then at semi, it's pretty accurate, more or less. But it's got a weird. You have to actually use it to see what I'm talking about. But it has a very weird spread. So let me just switch to Magnum to show you. Hopefully the bullets will disappear. Show you exactly what I mean at longer ranges, at least. Well, let's just even it, move back a bit. So without really controlling very much, you can see it kind of jumps around a lot. That's that, and then you compare it with something like the Vector at the same range, and I mean that's the difference. You can just see it's so tight, the spread. Similarly, with the CPW, I personally would choose the CPW. Same thing, much tighter spread than the OC. Let's go back to the OC briefly. Personally, I would go with both the CPW and the Vector over the OC, but it just tends to jump a lot more. I'm not really controlling there, but I wasn't controlling the others. Yeah, you can control it, but yeah, it's just not, for me, my go-to weapon. But the thing about SMGs that makes them interesting is that there's not really, at least as starting at tier 6, one that's obsolete. You know, I still keep my M96 around because this puppy has advantages that others don't have. For example, it has 100 rounds, the setup I have. 100 rounds. I mean, which means, you know, I can go to town like crazy as an SMG, and you know, that's pretty useful, I think, having all those extra rounds. It also has burst mode, which burst mode is always useful at longer ranges. It has 50% armor penetration, and this and the CPJ rather, have a 5% crit bonus, including hip firing. So you will have a higher chance of getting a crit when you're hip firing, which is quite useful. And then if you're out of hip, if you're scoping in, it goes up to 27. I think a 27% crit chance is pretty good on an SMG. You know, pretty good indeed. You know, at that range even, it's pretty decent. Switch to Magnum, see what kind of headshot. So, even though there's no way this has, say, the accuracy or the stability of 124, that's not too bad, of the CPW or the Vector, it's got other advantages. It's got the huge ammo pool for an SMG. It's got the crit modifier that works in hip firing mode as well as scoping in mode, and it's still a good SMG. It's not something you would just say, oh, I got the tier 8, I got the tier 9, I don't need this anymore. And I have the bad habit of selling weapons, but yeah, I definitely have kept this around. It's a good weapon. I would recommend using it, you know, for all variety of situations, short, medium range. You put the short barrel on, and you can really go to town, especially on smaller maps, for the simple reason that, you know, you're going to have a pretty good DPS, and you got those 100 rounds. You know, slide in and just go to town, or hip fired, or whatever. You know, you can keep on. You can't really. CPJ is like that too. I don't have it anymore, but you know, high damage per bullet, and then similarly the crit modifier. Not weapons to be disregarded, the tier 7 or the tier 6, and so really just a matter of preference. Now I know not everyone has this weapon, the AK, the AKS rather. But this is usually my go-to. You see my montage, my videos. I use this a lot. I mean, for those of you who don't know, don't have it, it is, with the stats, it is the worst control in the game. You can try burst moding here, and yeah, you kind of get away with it sometimes. It's in actual gameplay, though, it never works out that way, to be honest. It's so inaccurate, it's so uncontrollable. But certainly at short range, this is a great weapon. That's why I use it. It's got that high headshot modifier. I mean, you put it in the Magnum and, say at point blank or this range, 110, 110, 110. If I actually get a crit, let's see if we can get a crit. Get a crit there, maybe. 1.5, 210, 211 crit. This is kind of my go-to for short, medium range, short maps. I can make this work on larger maps, but it's a pain because really beyond 30 meters, this thing becomes pretty useless. Even at 30 meters, I prefer to burst fire it. And for those of you who don't know the AK series, I used to have the AK200, but not anymore, but that's similar. The AK200M is different, but for this weapon, it's got a limited range of application. I wouldn't personally really be using a 60. I'd be using a different SMG entirely. But yeah, you can kind of get away with it. It's just not that great. But the thing about SMGs, as I said, there's a lot of variety. There are a lot of different kinds of SMGs that you could use, and they really have kind of different applications. I wouldn't say one is better than the other. I mean, in the case of the Vector, right? It's clearly, it's got the highest DPS. It's like a laser gun, but it's only got 30 rounds of clip. That's a big disadvantage. And assuming, if you can't hit every shot, that's a problem. CPW is kind of a compromise. Doesn't have the same armor penetration, doesn't have the same DPS, but it's got 50 rounds. And with a long barrel, it's got comparable accuracy and stability. OC-14, for some people, it's kind of like a medium short range weapon. It's got good damage per bullet, pretty good DPS, but for me, it's just doesn't really work. M14, a different animal entirely. Decent DPS, huge ammo capacity, great crit, 6%, 6 to 27% crit. That's really fantastic. And then for those of you who are lucky or unlucky enough to have the AKS, 21 control. It's everyone's shit, everything's shit, but it is has stopping power like no other SMG. 54 damage per bullet, and those headshots. I mean, you saw in the videos, I can tank assaults, and it just works out really well in that regard. So SMGs, I think, more than any other weapon, in my opinion, for those of you who are using this as a guide or whatever, really come down to, how should I put it, to preference and your play style. I know guys that have been running the M960 for ages, even with the new weapons, and they're still doing really well. People now using the Vector, people using the CPW. I even know people using the P90 SD War still, but I think that's pretty obsolete. And OC and everyone's has differing degrees of success, and it's SMGs, like I said, it's not like assault. I mean, there's no reason as an assault to, I don't know, these days to use the M28, say, over the AN94 or the ASVAL SV. Not really, unless you're just nostalgic. There's no real reason. Just like, I mean, I use the AK200M, but with the LMGs, the M96, that's kind of a go-to. The Watchdogs, you get that too. And the latest one, well, my opinion on that. I'll get to LMGs at a later time. But, that's kind of in a nutshell, just very different. SMGs are just kind of choose your preference, choose what works for you. They have all have a different feel, different kind of range of applications. And frankly, some are better for longer range than others. I would not be. I've gotten away with the AKS on Metro. I would not use it regularly on Metro. I prefer to use the CPW, or maybe the M960 or the Vector, because this allows for more possibilities. Anyway, I hope that summarizes neatly the differences between the SMGs and allows you to make a decision if you haven't made a decision yet. Probably many of you have already figured out the kind of SMG you like to use as a recon, but that was hopefully a decent overview for you guys. Anyway, thanks for watching, and a like would be much appreciated, so don't forget to like the video, and everyone take care. Bye-bye.